A new dream Emma Foster gazed out the rain-speckled taxi window as the city's skyline unfurled before her, glittering and vast, full of promises and hidden secrets. It was her first time, truly, entering the world of the elite. Everything felt like a dream, a fragile hope she was half afraid to speak aloud, for fear it would shatter. Born and raised in the modest suburbs of Ohio, Emma was no stranger to hardship. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother to work double shifts at a local diner while Emma juggled her studies and part-time jobs. Her grit and academic excellence earned her a scholarship to Columbia University, where she eventually met David Montgomery, a quiet, charismatic law student with laughter that softened even her hardest days. Their romance was unexpected. Emma's sincerity and unwavering morality drew David in, while his warmth and faith in her fueled her ambition. Against a backdrop of coffee shops, bustling lecture halls, and late-night walks through Central Park, they fell deeply in love. David's proposal was simple, yet heartfelt, a promise that together they could face any storm. Now, as she approached the Montgomery family mansion for the first time as David's wife, Emma felt a swirl of emotions: excitement, apprehension, and an unshakable desire to belong. The mansion itself was intimidating, an ivy-clad Georgian estate resting on pristine lawns, its stone pillars tall and unyielding. "Ready?" David squeezed her hand, offering a reassuring smile. His confidence a sharp contrast to her nerves. Emma nodded, mustering a hopeful smile. She had heard enough gossip and seen enough probing glances at the wedding to anticipate the challenges ahead. The Montgomerys were not an ordinary family. They were old money, influential in both business and politics, with traditions thicker than the marble walls of their home. Stepping inside, Emma's senses were greeted by the faint scent of polished wood, floral arrangements so elaborate they looked more like art than decoration, and the echo of measured footsteps on the tiled foyer. Family portraits lined the grand staircase, each generation's faces stern and proud. Emma instinctively straightened her posture, silently promising herself she would make them proud too. David's mother, Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery, waited in the drawing room with a polite but distant smile. Her handshake was cool, her gaze unwavering. "You must be exhausted from your travels, Emma," she said, her tone cordial, but unmistakably clipped. Despite the formal welcome, Emma detected an undercurrent, curiosity tinged with skepticism. She introduced herself earnestly, hopeful her sincerity would build a bridge. The conversation felt rehearsed, like a performance in which Emma was unsure of her lines. Lunch followed, an elaborate meal where Emma met David's older sister, Ava, and his uncle, Charles. Ava's questions pricked like needles, always circling Emma's upbringing, her family's finances, phrased as innocent curiosity, but edged with judgment. Emma answered gracefully, refusing to let discomfort show. David tried to ease the awkwardness, but Emma sensed his own tension and uncertainty lurking beneath his supportive exterior. Still, Emma clung to her optimism. In stolen moments, she wandered the sunlit gardens and admired the library's floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, dreaming of quiet evenings spent there with David. Every step she took, she repeated her silent mantra: "This is my new beginning." As the day faded and the house gathered for dinner, Emma stole a last glance out her bedroom window. Beneath the vast New England sky, the sprawling estate felt both beautiful and daunting. But Emma's determination burned brighter than her fear. No matter how imposing the house or guarded the hearts within, she was resolved. She would write her own story here, no matter how difficult the first chapter proved to be. The first undercurrents. Emma woke to pale morning light filtering through gauzy curtains, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar grandeur of the bedroom. A far cry from the cramped apartment she'd shared with her mother for years. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint clink of cutlery from downstairs and the distant murmur of voices already at work. She took a deep breath, pulled on a soft sweater, and resolved to make a favorable impression today. This was her chance to prove herself worthy of her new family. Breakfast was held in the sunlit conservatory. The Montgomerys gathered around a long table set with glistening silver and fine china. David's seat beside her was a small comfort. Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery, immaculately dressed in pale blue, presided at the head of the table like a queen. She offered cordial greetings to everyone, but when she addressed Emma, her voice carried a barely perceptible chill. "I trust you slept well. You'll find our mornings tend to be quite structured in this household," she said, her lips shaping into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Ava, David's older sister, arrived fashionably late, her entrance accompanied by the familiar chiming of bracelets. She eyed Emma with polite interest, laced with thinly veiled skepticism. "Emma, darling, how do you like our little corner of New England so far? I imagine it's quite different from Ohio," she said, tone light but loaded. The others at the table, David's Uncle Charles and a cousin named Peter, shared subtle glances, their curiosity sprinkled with condescension. The conversation turned to current events, philanthropy, and summer plans. Emma tried to participate, but every remark she made about her upbringing, her education, or her thoughts on literature seemed to hang awkwardly in the air, met with patronizing smiles or non-committal nods. Every so often, Mrs. Montgomery interjected with gentle reminders about the family's traditions or the cool way we do things here. When Emma offered to help clear the table, Ava waved her off with a laugh. "Oh, honey, we have staff for that. Just enjoy yourself. Though I suppose old habits die hard, don't they?" As the day progressed, Emma was introduced to the household routine. Formal lunches, supervised walks in the gardens, and scheduled tea in the parlor, each punctuated by interactions that made the distance between her and the Montgomerys painfully obvious. Mrs. Montgomery assigned Emma small, helpful tasks: writing notes for thank you cards, arranging flowers for the entryway, that felt less like genuine duties and more like polite busy work designed to keep her out of the way. At lunch, another round of subtle antagonism surfaced. Ava's questions returned, circling Emma's family background. "What did your mother do again? I heard she was a waitress. That must have been quite the experience." Emma smiled and answered with as much grace as she could muster, but inside, she felt the sting of judgment. David was present, alternating between supportive glances and uncomfortable silences. When he attempted to steer the conversation away from Emma's background, his mother immediately redirected it with stories of family triumphs and networked connections in high society. Emma noticed the way David's posture tensed. His jaw clenched just slightly. He squeezed her hand under the table, a small gesture of encouragement, but said nothing directly to defend her. Afternoon brought a walk through the estate's manicured grounds, alongside Mrs. Montgomery and Ava. The conversation shifted to expectations, involvement in charity events, dress codes for upcoming galas, and the proper way to greet important guests. Emma listened, trying to keep up, even as every reminder
really do not need to do
underscored the
this.
differences in their worlds.
I represent
Of
the
course, you'll
best of
catch on
Montgomery
soon,
tradition,
Mrs. Montgomery said,
embodying
her
family
words
pride.
tinged with condescension.
They
Our
look at me,
family
but they
has
see
always
someone else.
represented the best of Montgomery
I just need a
tradition.
little more time,
By
and I can be
evening,
myself
fatigue
again.
had set in. Emma retreated to the library, seeking solace among the rows of leather-bound books. She tried to read, but snatches of the day's conversations replayed in her mind, each one a subtle reminder that she was an outsider here. Still, she told herself, first impressions were often wrong. Maybe with time and effort, the undercurrents
will
of
work.
suspicion
You
and
just have to
judgment
believe.
would subside. As night fell and the estate quieted, Emma stood at her window, looking out over the moonlit lawns. She felt the weight of the Montgomery legacy pressing in on all sides.
Tell
But
me,
she
what
also
was your
felt the
family life
ember
like growing
of
up?
resilience flickering inside her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of patience and strength. She vowed not to let these first slights break her spirit. She would survive, and if she had anything to say about it, she would belong. Isolation and heartache
what
by the
precisely
third
do you
morning
hope to
in the
achieve
Montgomery
with
estate,
such a transparent
Emma's
maneuver?
optimism had begun to lose some of its shine. In the early quiet, she could feel a growing distance, not only between
I am
herself
just saying
and the
this is
rest
the
of the
right thing to
family,
do.
but even in her own sense of self. Although she performed every minor task asked
Some
of her
people just lack
and
the
maintained
discernment for
polite
true
conversation, there was an invisible wall, as sturdy as the mansion's stone facade, keeping her firmly on the outside. Breakfast felt colder, the silences stretching longer. Mrs. Montgomery became more scrutinizing, her questions sharper, and her compliments laced with faint derision. "Be careful with the porcelain, dear," she said one morning as Emma poured herself coffee. "Some things in this house are more valuable than others. I'm sure you understand." Ava overheard and stifled a laugh, her eyes cool with amusement. In the days that followed, Emma noticed her involvement shrinking to the margins. She would enter a room only to find conversations pause or shift the moment she appeared. Family members exchanged glances when she offered her opinions, some barely disguising their impatience, others outright ignoring her presence. Tasks she suggested fulfilling, helping with household organization, researching family charities, even assisting the staff on busy days, were all quietly rejected or redirected. "You're a guest here, Emma. We can't have you overexerting yourself," Ava had quipped, the words dripping with sarcasm. The most painful moments, however, came from the insidious nature of the hostility. No one yelled, no one openly insulted her. Instead, it was the exclusion, the missed invitations to private lunches, the sly remarks couched as jokes, the patronizing
pleasure to meet you.
explanations about family traditions. Emma overheard Ava referring to her
And tell me,
as the scholarship
are you planning
bride
to wear
more
that
than
to the
once.
gala this evening?
And Uncle Charles commented on Emma's plain taste in clothes within her earshot. "Perhaps New York will inspire her wardrobe," he mused, smirking across the table. There were times when Emma was openly blamed for trivial household mishaps. Once, a vase of fresh hydrangeas toppled over in the hallway.
We
The
understand
housekeeper
this situation
apologized for
clearly.
the accident, but Mrs. Montgomery cast a knowing glance at Emma and quietly remarked, "We really must remember how
Family
delicate things
tradition,
can
my
be
dear.
under new management." When a dinner invitation was misplaced, suspicion fell on Emma,
Don't trouble yourself.
although she had not even touched the correspondence. No one accused her directly, but the sharp eyes and heavy silences said everything. David tried his best to provide comfort, but Emma could feel his own discomfort growing. He reassured her at night, whispering gentle words as they lay in the dim light of their bedroom. Yet during the
And your
day,
mother was a
he was
waitress,
less present,
correct?
drawn into business meetings. family obligations, or simply escaping the tension by retreating into silence. Emma did not blame him, not truly. It was simply one more loss in a mounting pile of disappointments. Growing more isolated, Emma found herself wandering the endless corridors alone, her footsteps echoing on cold marble. She missed her mother's apartment, the easy warmth of their cramped living room, laughter shared over simple dinners. Now, surrounded by luxury, she felt poorer than she ever had, stripped of comfort and companionship. Nights became the hardest to bear. Alone in a vast, ornate bedroom, Emma lay awake, replaying the day's humiliations and the words left unsaid. Her journal, once filled with ambitious plans and dreams, now documented moments of hurt and questioning. Sometimes she cried, muffling the sound in her pillow so no one would hear. Other times, she simply stared out over the moonlit grounds, searching for a sign of hope or a reminder of why she had chosen this path. All she found was silence. Yet, even as Emma's loneliness deepened, a flicker of determination remained. She refused to believe she was truly powerless. If she could survive so many hardships before, she would find some way through this. Though, at that moment, she didn't yet know how. All she could do was hold on for another day, hoping for a change and vowing, quietly and fiercely, not to let their scorn define her. A small ray of hope. The fourth morning dawned gray and heavy, casting the Montgomery estate in a muted hush. Emma sat at the breakfast table, her place now a fixture at the far end, a small island amid the sea of polite conversation. The scent of fresh coffee and buttered toast mingled in the air, but Emma barely noticed. The events of the past days weighed on her mind, and her heart ached with loneliness. Every morning brought the same routine, brief greetings that ended as quickly as they began, topics that skimmed past her, laughter that didn't quite include her. After the meal, the family drifted away into their individual lives. Business meetings, shopping trips, calls to distant relatives. The staff tidied up. Emma wandered aimlessly through the halls, a polite smile hiding her growing sense of isolation. Occasionally, she helped arrange flowers or draft a thank you note. But these small tasks felt hollow, more for show than purpose. It was mid-morning when Emma decided to seek solace in the garden, away from the echoing corridors and their reminders of all she lacked. She strolled along the path lined with dewy roses and hedges, trimmed to perfection, breathing in the fresh, earthy air. The garden, at least, felt honest, lush, fragrant, vibrant, despite the gloom overhead. As she rounded the corner by a weathered stone bench, Emma heard hushed voices from behind a cluster of lilacs. She hesitated, not wanting to intrude, but a gentle giggle drew her attention. Peering through the branches, she saw Lucy, David's much younger half-sister, with strawberry blonde hair and a thoughtful, artistic nature, sitting cross-legged on the grass. Next to her sat Margaret, the 80th, housemaid Emma recalled from the night she'd been welcomed to the mansion. A quiet woman in her late 30s with a kind face and patient eyes. They were laughing over a small sketchbook, Lucy's pencil dancing across the page as Margaret offered encouragement. Emma hesitated, worried she'd interrupt something private, but Lucy glanced up then, her cheeks flushing. "Emma, come join us, please," she called, her voice bright and sincere. Relief flickered in Emma's chest. She couldn't remember the last time anyone in the mansion had greeted her with genuine, enthusiasm.
We have
She
very
made her way
high
over,
expectations
tucking
for
her
the
hair
charity
behind her
event.
ear. "I
We
hope
named
I'm
you
not
Cece.
disturbing you," she said softly. Margaret shook her head, eyes
You'll
warm.
catch on soon enough.
"Of course not, Mrs. Montgomery. We were just admiring Lucy's latest creation." Lucy turned the sketchbook eagerly. The page was alive with color. A fanciful, sprawling treehouse nestled among branches, children clambering, lanterns glowing. Emma smiled, forgetting for a moment the heaviness that had dogged her steps. "That's beautiful, Lucy. You captured the light
It's okay.
perfectly."
You've
The
got
girl
this.
grinned, the approval lighting up her pale blue eyes. "Thank you. Margaret's helping me practice. She's way better than me, though." She nudged the older woman, who laughed modestly. Margaret glanced at Emma. "Lucy's talent is all her own. I'm just here to keep her company." Emma sat down on the bench, glancing up at the cloudy sky. For several minutes, the three of them simply enjoyed the quiet. The only sounds, the occasional rustling of leaves, and Lucy's animated chatter about her art. It was the first time Emma didn't feel like she was being watched or judged since her arrival. Eventually, Lucy looked up. "Do you draw, Emma?" Emma shook her head, smiling. "Not really. I used to doodle when I was bored in class. But nothing like this." She paused, glancing at Lucy and then Margaret. "I've always wanted to learn, though." Lucy jumped at the chance. "Let's do it now. I can show you what Margaret taught me about shading."
Good morning, everyone.
She pulled a spare
Good morning.
notebook and pencil from her bag, pressing them into
I
Emma's
trust
hands.
you all slept well.
Margaret's approval was
I
soft
just wanted to
but
tell you that
genuine.
this is not right.
It's all about seeing what's really there, not just what you expect to see. "Give it a try, Mrs. Montgomery."
There is a certain
There was no
way
trace
we
of
do
condescension
things
in her
here.
tone, only encouragement.
A
Emma
woman of
placed
your
pencil to
station must
paper,
always conduct
her
herself with
movements
the utmost
unsure at
decorum and
first.
grace,
But Lucy
understanding
leaned
the
over,
nuances of
her
proper
thin
social
finger
etiquette.
guiding Emma's hand. They laughed each time Emma's lines grew
I did
wobbly.
not expect you to
For the
be
first
here.
time in days, Emma's laughter was real, unselfconscious,
Do you
and easy. The trio spent over an
You really
hour
do not need to
together.
do this.
Margaret shared bits of her own
I
story,
represent the best
a childhood in
Montgomery
Boston,
tradition,
her love for
embodying
painting
family
that faded
pride.
once household work became her
They look at me,
future.
but they see
Lucy
someone
talked
else.
about her dreams of visiting
I
art
just need a little
museums
more
in the
time,
city,
then I can be
about her
myself
favorite
again.
authors, and her dislike of the formality that ruled their home. Gradually, Emma learned that Lucy, for all her family privilege, felt invisible too, overshadowed by adult expectations, often told to stay out of the way during important family gatherings. It was during a lull in conversation that Margaret's tone shifted, quieter,
I know this will
almost
work.
conspiratorial.
You just have to believe.
"I hope you don't mind me saying this, Mrs. Montgomery, but I know it's not easy for newcomers here, no matter how kind their hearts. The Montgomerys," she hesitated, weighing her words, "they have a way
Tell me,
of
what was your family
testing
life
people
like growing up?
sometimes." Emma met her gaze, grateful for the honesty, even as unease settled over her. "It's more than just testing, I think," she admitted. "Sometimes I feel like I'll never truly belong here." Margaret's lips pressed together. "You're not alone in that feeling. Just
And what
don't let it change who
precisely do
you
hope
are."
to achieve
She patted Emma's
with such a
hand,
transparent
sincerity
maneuver?
shining in her gentle
The dress
expression.
code for the upcoming
Lucy
gala
nodded
requires
fiercely.
full formal
"They're
attire,
just
ensuring adherence to
old-fashioned.
historical accuracy
I
and
think they'll
traditional
figure it
elegance.
out eventually."
I am
A
just saying
faint
this is the
smile
right thing
tugged
to
at
do.
Emma's lips. For the first time, she felt she wasn't completely isolated. Maybe,
Some people
in
just
this
lack the
huge,
discernment
intimidating
for true
house filled
quality.
with tradition and secrets, she could carve out a corner of real belonging, with people who understood what it meant to be on the edges. As clouds parted and sunlight spilled over the garden, Lucy packed up her sketchbook. "Can we meet here again tomorrow morning?" she asked, hope clear in her voice. Emma nodded, feeling a genuine warmth in her chest. "I'd really like that, Lucy." They parted ways, Margaret back to her duties, Lucy off to her music lesson, Emma retracing the winding path to the house. The walls of the mansion seemed less imposing, the air less heavy. She now had a secret, however small. Two kindred spirits who saw her as more than an intruder. At lunch, Emma noticed subtle shifts, a little less edge in Lucy's voice when she answered questions, a glimmer of sympathy behind Margaret's eyes as she served tea. The cruelties of the larger family didn't vanish, of course. Ava picked at Emma's choice of dress as usual. Mrs. Montgomery delivered another thinly veiled critique about Emma's humble roots. But something fundamental had changed. After dinner, Emma sat in her room and opened her journal, not to pour out her sadness, but to record this small victory. She tucked the journal away, hope fluttering inside her like a determined bird. There was still pain, still plenty of loneliness.
It is a pleasure.
But for the first time, a crack of light reached into even the darkest rooms
And tell me,
of the Montgomery
are you
house.
planning to wear
Night
that
fell,
to the gala this evening?
and Emma lay in bed, tracing patterns of moonlight on the ceiling. Her heart a little lighter. She had found her first allies. There was ground to gain and battles to fight. But now, at last, she knew she didn't have to face them entirely by herself. Shadows from the past, the
We
unexpected,
understand this situation
warmth Emma
clearly.
found in Lucy, and Margaret's company lingered with her into the following days, gently softening her loneliness. But the rest of the Montgomery
Family
household
tradition, my
remained
dear.
as cold and unyielding as ever. It became routine for Emma to seek solace
Oh,
in the
don't
garden
trouble
or
yourself.
the quietest corners of the mansion, far from the formal lounges and stately dining rooms where her presence still felt intrusive. One afternoon, when a storm rolled in early and thunder rattled the window panes, Emma found herself alone in the vast, wood-paneled library. Rain streaked down the tall
And
windows,
your mother was a
casting
waitress,
dappled
correct?
shadows across the Persian rugs and the endless rows of gilded books. It was the one place in the house where she felt almost invisible, a quiet observer among history's whispers. She wandered between shelves, running her fingers across the spines, old leather cracked with age. Her gaze settled on a battered volume tucked into a dusty lower shelf. Curious, she crouched down and slid it out, surprised by its weight. The book was a household ledger, dated decades before David was born. As she paged through the careful columns of script, something strange caught her eye. A series of handwritten notes wedged between the pages, their edges worn and yellowed with time. At first, Emma hesitated, even after all the slights and whispered insults. She still felt like a guest in this house, uncertain where her boundaries lay. But as she flipped through the notes, a phrase leaped out at her. Wire transfer, offshore, urgent. Do not speak to Evelyn. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. Emma's curiosity deepened. There was another folded paper, a faded letter with a faint embossed crest. The Montgomery family's crest, half missing from a torn corner. She tucked the notes discreetly into her coat pocket,
I know,
heart
you have to do
thudding with
something.
the sense that she'd crossed an invisible line. Intent on not arousing suspicion, Emma tucked the ledger back on the shelf and wandered away, her head buzzing with unanswered questions. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. Polite conversation at tea time, a stilted exchange with Mrs. Montgomery, who barely registered her presence, and a long, pensive
Is
walk
everything
in the
always so
drizzle
much larger in
that
Ohio?
lingered after the storm. Emma's thoughts returned again and again
So,
to the
about the
cryptic
foundation's
notes.
next steps,
Urgent
I was
money
wondering if you
matters,
could. Yes,
secret
that's a good point, but
transfers,
before we move on, I
warnings
wanted
not to
discuss your
speak to
background.
family members. It was more than mere financial maneuvering. It felt like desperation. That evening, After dinner, Emma retreated to her bedroom under the
cannot
pretense
believe this
of a
happened.
headache. Seated at her vanity, she carefully unfolded the documents she'd found and examined them by the soft glow of her lamp. The longer letter was a revelation. It was written in hurried script, addressed to E, almost certainly Evelyn Montgomery, and spoke about a settlement involving a failed investment fund, references to the SEC, hushed arrangements, and the demand for strict confidentiality. Emma's breath caught. Growing up with little, she was only dimly aware of how the rich could manipulate the world to shield themselves. But here, in plain language, were words hinting at fraud, bribes, and cover-ups worthy of the financial scandals she'd read about in the news. The final lines were stark. If anyone in the family learns the full extent, everything we've built will come crashing down. Destroy these papers once the transfer clears. Emma's hands shook as she set down the letter. She scoured the room for more clues, fearful of being discovered, yet unable to quell her urgent curiosity. The smallest crack in the Montgomery armor was laid bare before her. Their legendary legacy built, at least in part, on something rotten. That night was sleepless. Emma's mind raced with possibilities. Visions of her mother's weary but honest life, colliding with the family whose acceptance she'd so desperately craved. She felt the sting of every time Ava had belittled her, every time Mrs. Montgomery's condescension had made her feel lesser, all while this family harbored rot inside its very foundation. When dawn crept through the curtains, Emma moved with a new sense of purpose. She slipped the letters into a small pouch at the bottom of her closet. Beneath folded clothes, no one would search. After a careful, sleepless breakfast, she excused herself from the family's plans. Some talk of an afternoon board meeting and charity committee gathering, and slipped away to the garden where the air felt less oppressive. She found Margaret arranging hydrangeas in a large porcelain vase. With the practiced care of someone who'd seen and heard more than she let on, Margaret glanced at Emma's pale, serious face and paused. "I found something," Emma whispered, careful to glance around and keep her voice low. "Something odd about the family's finances. I don't know what to do." Margaret's eyes darkened. She wiped her hands on her apron and motioned for Emma to follow to a quieter spot, away from open windows. "I'm not surprised," she murmured.
It's okay.
"There have been
We've got
rumors
this."
for years. In a place like this, secrets are as common as silverware." Emma's relief was immediate. She didn't have to spell out details for Margaret to understand. "Do you think David knows?" she asked. "Unlikely," Margaret said softly. "Your husband is a good man, Emma. But he grew up trusting this family, believing their story, same as everyone else. What you found," Margaret hesitated, then squeezed Emma's hand. "Be careful. People who protect old money don't take kindly to digging up buried things." That warning de-haunted Emma the rest of the day. She realized, for the first time, how exposed she was. Any misstep could see her blamed, cast out, or worse, derailed for trying to upend the very people she had hoped would accept her. Yet the notion of staying silent, being complicit in some hidden wrongdoing, was unbearable. She spent the next few days quietly observing, listening more closely in the corridors, watching interactions with a sharper eye. She noticed arguments behind closed doors, snippets of phone conversations, cut abruptly short when she entered a room, bankers' names mentioned in whispers, the Montgomerys' obsession with reputation, and their constant talk of legacy now made chilling sense. Emma felt both empowered and endangered. The secrets she had stumbled upon gave her leverage,
I did not
but they
expect you to be
also
here.
made her more of an outsider than ever before.
You're
She
gonna say
confided
thank you,
nothing to
Unai.
David yet. Her trust in him was still
You really do not need
intact,
to do this.
her love undiminished,
I
but she wasn't
represent the
sure
best
where his
of Montgomery
loyalties
tradition,
truly lay. At night,
embodying
she
family
wrote in
pride.
her journal, laying out what she
They
knew,
look at me, but they see
tracing
someone else.
connections. The picture was
I
still
just need a little
partial,
more time,
but
then I can
Emma's
be myself
resolve
again.
was growing. If this family had truly wronged others, if their fortune rested on injustice, she would not be able to live with herself by turning away. With her discovery came a new sense of clarity. The days of longing for the Montgomerys' approval were over. Emma was no longer a guest, no longer begging for acceptance. She was a witness.
I know this will work.
And soon,
We just have to
perhaps
believe.
sooner than she could foresee, she would be forced to choose: protect their legacy or expose the shadows for the world to see. Plotting revenge. A silent storm brewed in Emma as she moved through the mansion's echoing halls
Tell me, what
in the
was your
days
family life
after
like
her
growing
discovery. Gone was the girl desperate for approval. Beneath her measured movements and polite smiles, she was unraveling each thread of the Montgomery family's fabric, only to twist it toward a new purpose. She could not and would not allow herself to become an
And
accomplice
what precisely
to the
do you hope
secrets
to achieve
she had
with
uncovered.
such a transparent
Instead,
maneuver?
she would
The
become
dress
an
code for the
agent of
upcoming
their
gala
reckoning.
requires full
But
formal attire,
revenge, she
ensuring
knew,
adherence to historical
demanded
accuracy
patience
and
and
traditional
cunning.
elegance.
This was
I am
not
just
the
saying
brash
this is the right thing to
retribution
do.
of raised voices or slammed doors. It was an almost invisible chess match,
Some people just
one
lack the
misstep
discernment
from
for true
ruin
quality.
or retribution. She began by controlling herself. Outwardly, nothing changed. Emma still attended dinners, nodded along at charity meetings, and accepted Mrs. Montgomery's dismissive instructions with humility. Inside, though, she cataloged slights both new and old, and every careless whisper or confidential document was now a potential weapon. Her first step was information. She needed allies and more evidence. Carefully, Emma intensified her friendship with Margaret, the housemaid, whose empathy and deep knowledge of the household's inner workings had become invaluable. Emma approached her not just out of camaraderie, but out of strategic necessity. After a morning spent arranging lilies for the drawing room, Emma pulled Margaret aside with a steady urgency in her voice. "I need your help," Emma said quietly, watching Margaret's eyes flicker with understanding. "Not just for me, for everyone who comes close to this family. There's more here than I realized. Have you ever seen any documents or heard anything that might help fill in the blanks?" Margaret considered for a moment before nodding. "There is a locked file cabinet in Mr. Montgomery's study. All the most private records, bank statements, letters from lawyers are kept there. Only Mrs. Montgomery and Charles have keys, but I've dusted around it enough to know it matters." Emma took note.
It is a pleasure to
She would
meet
have
you.
to get creative if she wanted access. But Margaret's knowledge
And tell
was
me,
a start.
Are you
Together,
planning to wear that to the
late at
gala
night,
this evening?
by the kitchen's soft glow, they began piecing together a makeshift map. Margaret's recollection of cryptic phone calls and visitors in expensive suits. Emma's notes from overheard conversations and the damning documents hidden away in her closet. They plotted gaps and possibilities,
We
physically
understand this
drawing
situation
timelines
clearly.
and family connections on pages ripped from Emma's journal. Meanwhile, Emma's relationship with Lucy deepened. Lucy,
Family
perceptive
tradition, my
despite
dear.
her youth, noticed her sister-in-law's growing restlessness. One afternoon, as they sat in the
don't trouble
garden,
yourself.
sketchbooks between them, Lucy hesitated before finally voicing her concern. "You seem sadder than before," she said uncertainly. "Even when you smile, it's like you're pretending." You can talk to me, Emma. I promise I won't tell anyone. For a moment, Emma felt a pang of guilt for bringing a child
Your mother
into
was
any
a
of this.
waitress, correct?
But she saw Lucy's sincerity and realized she could offer a piece of truth. There are things in this house that aren't right, Emma admitted gently. The more I see, the less I understand about what it means to be a Montgomery. Lucy's small hand found hers. You make me feel like I'm not so alone. It was all the encouragement Emma needed to continue. The next stage was riskier. Emma knew that simply possessing evidence was not enough. She would have to ensure the truth reached people with the power to force consequences, the authorities or the press. But first, she needed access to more concrete proof. With Margaret's help, Emma devised a plan. One afternoon, she would claim to be organizing David's paperwork as a favor, an entirely believable pretense for a dutiful new wife. This would give her plausible reason to be near the study and, if the opportunity arose, inside. The day arrived with a sense of foreboding. Emma set out early, intercepting the head housekeeper to request time in the study. By chance, or perhaps due to her growing skill at reading the family's routine, she found an afternoon when Charles and Evelyn were both occupied elsewhere. Margaret stationed herself in the hallway under the guise of polishing brass, signaling with a gentle cough if anyone approached. Emma's hands trembled, only briefly, as she slipped into the study. The cabinet stood unassuming against the dark paneled bulb, heavy, locked, with a small crack on its lower edge from decades of use. Margaret had observed that the cleaning staff once found a key left absent-mindedly in Lady Montgomery's writing desk. And, after a week of surreptitious searching, Emma had quietly liberated it. She slid the key into the lock. Inside the cabinet, documents were arranged by year and subject. Emma's fingers danced over folders labeled investments, charity holdings, and legal correspondence. She methodically photographed pages detailing shell company transfers, unexplained international payments, even personal letters where legal maneuvers were discussed in chilling frankness. Her heart hammered as she worked, acutely aware that discovery would mean certain expulsion, or worse. Within half an hour, everything that could be copied was safely stored on her phone and backed up to an encrypted email. She returned files as she found them, erased any trace of her intrusion, and locked the cabinet behind her. Slowly, she walked back through the corridors, smiling and making small talk with passing staff as if nothing had happened. The sense of accomplishment warred with the dread twisting in her stomach. Emma knew that she now held enough evidence to destroy the Montgomery reputation. What she didn't know was whether to trust David with the truth. He had been distant lately. Buried in family business, he refused to discuss with her. She feared for him. How would he react if the legacy he believed in came crashing down? If she told him and he sided with his family, would she lose the one person she truly loved in this complex web? That night, Emma confided in Margaret once more, her voice barely above a whisper.
I'm curious.
What if I destroy the future David believes in? But if I stay silent, I become part of everything this family has done wrong. Margaret's response was gentle, but steady. You do what's right, Mrs. Montgomery. David loves you. If he truly is the man you believe him to be, he'll find his own strength in the truth. But you can't wear everyone's burdens forever. Emma mulled Margaret's words in the darkness, feeling the burden, but also the spark of conviction. It was time to prepare her next move. Over the following days, she began contacting a trusted journalist she knew from her university days. Using an anonymous email account and encrypted messages, Emma carefully
I
explained
want you to
that she
remember
had
that your father
explosive
knew you were
material
innocent.
on one of New England's oldest dynasties
We have
and would
very
reveal
high
details at the
expectations
right
for the
time.
charity event.
She also researched
We need you
legal
safely.
protections for whistleblowers and began quietly moving her most important
You'll
possessions,
catch on soon enough.
her journal, her mother's keepsakes, the digital copies of the documents, into a bag she could access at a moment's notice. If the family sensed her plans, she might have only minutes to escape. Despite the fear, Emma's spirit felt lighter for the first time since her arrival. She no longer wandered the corridors lost. She moved with purpose and certainty, greeted staff
It's
with
okay.
new warmth,
You've got this.
and even lifted Lucy's spirits by helping her plan an art project for the local elementary school. In secret, she and Margaret reviewed every step, checking and double-checking their plan. At night, as storms lashed the darkened estate, Emma sat at her vanity and stared at her own determined reflection. She was no longer the outsider haunted by loneliness. She was the force that would drag the Montgomery secrets into the light. Whether or not the family saw the gathering storm, she was ready to bring it down. The decisive
It's a
blow
rather
dawn
peculiar
crept
situation,
across the
wouldn't you
Montgomery
agree?
estate, painting the elegant ceilings in pale gold, though its warmth did not reach the people within. The household buzzed with its usual orchestrated rhythm, staff moving briskly along polished floors, family members shuffling through their routines, each step measured and deliberate. But beneath it all, a sense of unease crackled in the
Good morning,
air,
everyone.
invisible
Good morning.
yet undeniable. Something had shifted in the
I
mansion,
trust you all slept
and Emma
well.
felt it with every
I
breath.
just wanted to tell you
In
that
her
this is
room,
not right.
Emma sat by her window, clutching her phone and rereading the encrypted email she'd sent the previous night. It had been a leap of faith. Her years of scholarship at Columbia, her brief journalism experience, and every ounce of her moral compass guiding her hand. The message contained concise summaries, document scans, and
I
her
did not
promise
expect you to
to
be
meet
here.
with the journalist from her university on neutral ground
You gonna
if it
sing
became
late
safe
one
to
night?
do so. Standing on the precipice,
You really do not need to
Emma
do
was
this.
trembling, not from
I
fear,
represent
but
the
anticipation.
best of Montgomery
There
tradition,
would be no way back.
embodying
As the family
pride.
gathered for breakfast, Evelyn
They look at
presiding
you,
at
but
the
they
head of
see
the
someone
table,
else.
Charles absorbed in his
I
phone,
just need a little more
Ava
time, and I
ensuring
can
her
do myself
superiority hovered over every conversation. Emma felt as if she were a stranger, witnessing an unfamiliar play. She glanced at David, whose distracted frown deepened the lines around his eyes. Each time the conversation drifted to family business or the upcoming charity gala, Emma's pulse quickened. She wondered if anyone else sensed the coming
I know
storm.
this will work.
Midway through the
You just
meal,
have to believe.
Evelyn received a hushed phone call. Her tone sharpened, words clipped. How on earth could this be possible? No, that's not true. The files are private. She locked eyes with Charles, who blanched and left the table with
Tell
a
me,
brisk,
what was your family
silent
life like
nod.
growing up?
Ava's smile grew brittle. Peter, the cousin, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It didn't take long for the first headline to appear. Someone screamed from the corridor outside, and within minutes, the household was in disarray. Margaret, wide-eyed, slipped into the breakfast
And what
room,
precisely
setting
do you
a
hope to
folded
achieve
newspaper
with
on the
such a
polished wood
transparent
table.
maneuver?
Across the
The
front
dress code for
page
the upcoming
was a
gala
name
requires
that needed
full
no
formal attire,
introduction.
ensuring
Montgomery
adherence to
scandal,
historical accuracy and
funds,
traditional elegance.
fraud, offshore
I am just saying
accounts,
this is the right
regulatory
thing to do.
investigation, and, most damning, a string of emails cited as
Some people
evidence,
just lack the
blurred for
discernment true
privacy,
quality.
but unmistakable in content and tone. Evelyn Montgomery paled as the weight of the morning descended, and hysteria threatened to crack her composure. Charles made a call, voice trembling. In the meantime, staff whispered in corners, their years of forced silence suddenly turning to speculation. "It can't be real," someone gasped. "They're untouchable, but not anymore." Emma felt a paradoxical calm settle over her. She had wondered if the moment of revelation would be punctuated by guilt or terror, but instead, it felt like the lifting of a great, heavy stone. For the first time since entering the mansion, she felt she truly owned her choices. In the scramble that ensued, police cars and government vehicles rolled through the gates. Investigators in pressed suits came with folders and search warrants, and questions that brooked no delay. In the study, files disappeared into evidence bags. None of the family's prestige or history could shield them from the relentless, methodical process. Amid the chaos, Emma was approached by the very reporter she had spoken to online. She'd arranged, quietly and cautiously, for them to meet in the garden. The journalist, a young woman with a determined chin and sympathetic eyes, asked her,
It is a pleasure
"Are you
to
sure
meet
you want to be named? You can stay anonymous." For a moment,
And tell
Emma
me,
hesitated,
are you planning
but
to wear
then she
that to
thought
the
of her
gala
mother's
this evening?
tired smile, Margaret's loyalty, Lucy's hidden scars, and decades of injustice preserved in those ornate walls. "No," she answered quietly. "I need them to know it was me. Not out of spite, but so that maybe the next person who walks through those doors
We
won't be
understand this
destroyed
situation
by the weight
clearly.
of their secrets." Meanwhile, the Montgomerys scrambled to defend themselves. Evelyn and Charles summoned law firms
Family
and crisis
tradition, my dear.
managers who arrived in expensive suits. But each new revelation was met
Oh,
only
don't
by
trouble
more
yourself.
damning evidence. Ava's phone lit up with messages, and the whispered support from her high society acquaintances dwindled as the scandal snowballed. Peter, desperate and stammering, attempted to distance himself entirely. David disappeared for hours behind slammed doors. The media swarmed
And
the
your
estate,
mother was a waitress,
drones
correct?
hovering, reporters camped at the gate. Emma kept to a quiet corner of the garden for much of the day. Margaret and Lucy, her only confidants. Margaret squeezed her
You must
shoulder,
uphold the family
whispering,
name with
"You
dignity
did the
and
right
grace,
thing, dear.
which begins
However
with your
hard,
appearance."
you've set something in motion that will change everything." Lucy, her eyes wide with awe and fear, asked, "Does it hurt, being brave like that?" Emma smiled, gathering Lucy into a gentle embrace. "It does, and it doesn't. Sometimes you're scared, but it feels worse to do nothing." By late afternoon, authorities had begun formal interviews with each of the adults. Staff were questioned too, with many finally voicing old grievances: the long hours, the hush money, the intimidation. The Montgomery world, once so protected, was dissolving bit by bit, and for the first time, Emma noticed a strange hopefulness in whispers between the teeth. Staff, liberation sparkling at the edge of uncertainty. David found Emma in the darkening garden, his expression conflicted. "Did you know?" he whispered, voice taut with pain and betrayal. Emma met his eyes steadily. "Yes," she said softly, "and I couldn't let them bury the truth, no matter how much it hurt."
I know,
He
but you
paled,
have to do something.
jaw tightening as he struggled for words. "You could have told me." In the evening, news of a formal investigation appeared on every network. Some Montgomery assets were frozen, donations refused. Neighbors and former friends watched from a distance, some with gloating, others with pity or horror. The mighty family name that once opened every door
Is
now
everything
closed
always
them
so
just
much
as
larger
quickly.
in Ohio?
Emma spent that night not in the mansion, but in the garden gazebo, listening to the distant murmur of
could.
agitated
Yes, that's a good
voices
point. But
within.
before we move
She
on,
wrote
I
in
wanted
her
to discuss
journal
your
by
background.
lamplight, the words coming easily at last. I have given away certainty for honesty. The walls that held me prisoner are falling. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time, I think it might be mine to choose. At midnight, as the last government cars pulled away, under the glare of camera lights, and the old Montgomery estate finally stood silent, Emma stood at the window and watched the moon cast silvery shadows across the lawn. The decisive blow had fallen, and the reverberations would shape not only the family, but Emma herself. She was no longer a stranger, treading carefully at the edge of history. She was its author, and there was no going back. Collapse and confrontation. The fallout from the scandal shattered the routine of the Montgomery estate. The mansion, once a symbol of order and everlasting tradition, now throbbed with confusion and dread. News vans lined the gates, security posted in places where only gardeners once stood. Inside, rumors spiraled into arguments, and the hush of secrecy was replaced with angry voices, echoing down polished corridors. In the days following the public exposure, the family's powerful facade eroded rapidly. Social invitations ceased. The phone rang from dawn to dusk. Reporters, investigators, former friends, eager for gossip or distance.
I'm curious.
Headlines
Where do you keep
grew
your
more
money now,
specific
dear?
and damning. Generations of wealth under investigation. Montgomery Dynasty's dark ties confirmed. Victims come forward.
Is it though?
The public's fascination evolved from
This is
shock
my new
to
beginning.
outrage as more details emerged, including confessions from former employees and allegations of decades of manipulation. For the first time in its long history, the Montgomery home felt like a prison. No one came or went without scrutiny. Security checkpoints and police interviews became the new rhythm of daily life. The grand halls, once resounding with laughter at lavish parties, now felt haunted by regret and shame. David barely slept. He paced his childhood bedroom, the same room where he'd once dreamed of heroics and honor for the family name. Now, every cherished portrait that watched him from the walls felt like another judge. Emma often heard him talking on the phone, urgency and distress in his voice, speaking with lawyers, with friends who remained loyal, with his sister Ava, who'd suddenly become unreachable. He avoided most of the family, drawn only to Emma in moments of raw honesty. Emma herself moved through the house with purpose and caution. The staff, many of whom had long endured subtle abuses, now offered her sympathetic nods. Margaret was her quiet confidant, checking in with gentle words. Lucy clung to her, seeking reassurance that their small corner of connection could survive the chaos. But for the rest, Emma was the storm that had toppled a dynasty, or, as some quietly admitted to her, the force that had finally brought long-needed change. One afternoon, as a gray rain beat at the windows, Evelyn Montgomery called a family meeting in the drawing room. Emma entered to find Evelyn standing like a queen among ruins at the marble mantel, her iron gray hair immaculate, her mouth pressed in a hard, thin line. Charles and Peter fidgeted uneasily, their suits wrinkled after restless nights. Ava sat apart, arms crossed, face tight and unreadable. Evelyn's tone brooked no argument. This is no time for cowardice or self-pity, she began. We are Montgomerys. We have survived scandals before. But even as she spoke, her voice cracked slightly. Charles interjected. How can you compare a mismanaged trust to this, Evelyn? We're being audited by the feds. We've lost partnerships overnight. The family's assets, they are frozen for now," Evelyn snapped, her composure tugging at the edges. "We
did
will
not
not
expect you to
collapse
be
into
here."
bickering." Emma met Evelyn's gaze, steady
You're gonna
and
say right,
unflinching.
don't I?
"Who gave you the right to build everything
really do
you
not need to do
have
this.
on lies?" Her voice was calm
represent
but
the
resolute.
best of Montgomery
"Did you ever
tradition,
wonder about the people
embodying
you
family
ruined
pride.
with your deals? The people whose
They look at
lives
me, but they
were
see
left
someone
in the
else.
rubble of your ambition?"
I just need a little
A
more
tense
time,
silence
then I can be
followed.
myself again.
Ava was the first to break it, voice sharp as glass. "You think you know everything, Emma, but you never understood what this family had to do to survive. You think idealism alone puts food on tables or pays for hospitals?" Emma looked at David, whose eyes were red with grief. "There's a difference between surviving and becoming what you once swore you'd never be," she said,
I know this will
her
work.
voice softening.
We just have to
"You could have
believe.
been part of the solution, Ava. All of you. Instead, you closed ranks and pretended it was noble, or necessary, or someone else's fault." Peter, usually silent, blurted out, "So
Tell
what
me,
now?
what was your
Are we
family life
expected
like
to just
growing up?"
beg for mercy, repent in the court of public opinion?" In that moment, the core of the family's identity, its belief in its own invincibility, cracked. For years, they'd justified everything for the sake of legacy, even as the foundation rotted beneath them. And now
And
they
what
were
precisely do
forced
you
to
hope
face
to
each other
achieve
as
with such a
fallible,
transparent
flawed,
maneuver?
and deeply
The dress
wounded.
code for the upcoming
Emma
gala
stood at the
requires
heart
full
of the
formal attire,
confrontation,
ensuring
her
adherence to
anger and
historical
heartbreak
accuracy and
mixed with
traditional
an
elegance.
unexpected sense of
I am
relief.
just saying this is
"You
the right
asked for an
thing to do.
explanation, Evelyn. I did what I did because I could not watch another generation be
Some
stained
people just
with
lack the
choices
discernment
they
for
never
true
made.
quality.
Lucy, your staff, even David. They deserved the truth, even if it hurt." Evelyn blinked hard, drawing herself up, but her bravado faltered. "You think exposing us brings you value? You are a footnote, Emma. And when this passes, everyone will remember you as the destroyer." David intervened. "Enough, Mother." His voice was hoarse, but unwavering. "She did what none of us had the courage to do. Maybe that's what we really needed, a reckoning." Ava's facade crumbled, tears mingling with fury. "I did everything right. I played their game, and look where it got us." Emma's voice was gentle, but her message unwavering. "You can start again. It won't be the life you wanted, but maybe it will be the life you need. You're not defined by the Montgomery name. You're defined by the choices you make after this." The family splintered into silence, each member grappling with pride, guilt, and the newfound weight of being seen for what they truly were. Margaret entered quietly to announce that authorities wanted to speak with everyone again. The room scattered, but the air was changed. Accusations had been replaced, for the first time, by reflection. Later that day, as sunlight pierced through thinning clouds, Emma found herself alone in the garden. David joined her, not as the scion of a dynasty, but as a man stripped
It was a
bare
pleasure
of
to
old
meet you.
illusions. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, voice
And
trembling.
tell me,
"But
are
I
you
know I
planning
love
to
you,
wear that to the gala
and I
this
want to
evening?
try to live honestly. Whatever comes next." Emma squeezed his hand. "That's all I ever hoped for, David. Not power, not acceptance, just honesty, a chance to live my own life and help others, maybe even you, do the same." For the rest of the day, as lawmen and lawyers came and went,
We understand
as phone
this
calls
situation
crackled with
clearly.
crisis, the Montgomerys began to taste the first bittersweet flavor of humility. Some, like Evelyn, clung to their
Family
dignity
tradition, my
even in
dear.
disgrace. Others, like Ava and Peter, withdrew into guilt and remorse.
Oh, don't
A
trouble
few,
yourself.
servants and neighbors, watched with cautious hope that real change might finally take root. As night fell, Emma stood at the window, overlooking the rain-soaked lawns. The mansion behind her was quieter than she'd ever known, no longer resounding with denial or empty ritual. In the silence,
And your mother was
there
a
was
waitress,
space
correct?
for reflection, for pain, but also, perhaps, for the first seeds of forgiveness. The collapse had come, but so had the confrontation,
You must uphold
raw
the family
and
name with
unfiltered.
dignity
For
and
Emma
grace,
and the
which begins
Montgomerys,
with your appearance.
nothing would ever be the same. Yet in the ruins, possibilities stood waiting, fragile but real, for those brave enough to reach for them. Emma stands up the days after the Montgomery downfall, past in a strange, shimmering blur. The estate, once a fortress of pride and routines, now felt suspended in a fragile silence. Television vans and curious onlookers still lingered beyond the tall iron fence,
gonna relax.
hoping to catch a glimpse
I am
of the shamed dynasty.
I am asking you to
Inside,
tell me everything
fractured
you know.
conversations ricocheted off marble floors, and the grand staircases seemed to lead only to locked rooms and unfinished regrets. For Emma, a profound exhaustion set in at first. Her mind dulled by emotional fatigue, her body hollowed by sleepless nights in the weight of decisive action. Yet underneath, something unexpected began to grow. A quiet, persistent strength she couldn't recall feeling before. She started her mornings alone,
It's complicated, Mother.
walking the lawns draped in morning
I
mist,
know, but you have
where
to do
Emma's
something.
steps had once been timid, careful not to disrupt the order of the mansion. Now she moved deliberately, chin higher, her gaze steady. Staff she passed in the halls met her with new respect, some with gratitude, some with tentative hope. Margaret beamed whenever their paths crossed, in the kitchen or garden, her eyes always soft and full of unspoken
Is
encouragement.
everything always
One
so much
bright
larger
morning,
in Ohio?
Emma gathered her courage and entered the formal dining room, traditionally the domain of the Montgomery elders.
Yes,
Evelyn,
that's a good point. But
regal
before we move
even
on,
in
I wanted
distress,
to discuss your
sipped her
background.
coffee in icy solitude. Emma approached, nerves fluttering, but refused to let herself shrink away. "Mrs. Montgomery," Emma said, her voice
I cannot
calm,
believe this happened.
"I know this isn't easy, but going forward, I hope you can see that what's left can be built on something honest, for your family and for yourself." Evelyn's mouth tightened. At first, it seemed she would dismiss Emma with her customary cool indifference. But after a long pause, the older woman simply nodded. "You're stronger than I thought, Emma," she said
you all right?
quietly. "Perhaps the only
I will
one in
be.
this house who ever was."
I will be.
Emma left the room with her heart trembling. Relief,
We will go
surprise,
through this together.
and the strange satisfaction of having finally spoken her mind. Not in anger,
I presume
but in
you have
truth.
an explanation
Later
for
that
this.
day, as she read
I was
near an
Mary.
open window, Ava entered, her posture less rigid, her face streaked with the evidence of many sleepless nights. For the first time, Ava did not wear her air of superiority. She hovered uncertainly before sitting near Emma, folding her hands tightly in her lap. "I was wrong about you," Ava admitted, voice raw, "about a lot of things. You stood up for what mattered. I don't know if I ever had the courage." Emma hesitated, then offered a simple, compassionate smile. "We all want to belong, Ava. But sometimes, it's more
I'm
important
curious.
to become someone
Where do you
we
keep
can
your money now,
respect,
dear?
even if it means standing alone." Ava held her gaze for a long moment. Finally, she reached out, squeezing Emma's hand,
It is going to be all
a
right.
small
it
gesture
then?
of apology and thanks. Throughout the week,
This is my new
Emma made it a
beginning.
point to seek out others whom the family had overlooked. She spoke to the cooks, the gardeners, the cleaning women, who often blended into the background, yet had kept the household from falling
Our
apart
mornings are a
through every
carefully
storm.
choreographed
Instead of
symphony
polite
of
acknowledgments,
efficiency,
and
Emma
purpose.
engaged them genuinely, asking about their families, remembering their names, listening without judgment or hurry. The warmth she received in return fanned the
I want you to
flame
remember that your
of her
father
new
knew you were
resolve.
innocent.
Even Lucy, once so
We have
tentative
very
and
high
shy,
expectations
seemed
for the
transformed
charity
by
event.
Emma's support. One
Katie
afternoon,
Seagley.
the two of them found themselves painting together on the garden veranda.
You'll catch on soon
Lucy,
enough.
her freckles glowing in the sunlight, whispered, "I'm glad you stayed, Emma. I thought I'd always be invisible here." Emma smiled, dipping her brush in aquamarine paint. "Sometimes you have to make your own place in the world, Lucy. Even if it feels impossible, you keep trying, and eventually someone else sees you too." David,
It's okay.
meanwhile,
You've got this.
struggled with the aftermath in private. The legacy he had once carried with pride was now shadowed by dishonor. He sought Emma's counsel for the first time, not as the family's chosen son, but as a partner, seeking guidance and forgiveness. Many evenings, they sat together beneath the stars, their conversations honest, unweighted by pretense. "I need to make something real," David confessed one night. "Not for the Montgomerys, for us, for me. I'm done hiding behind their name." Emma squeezed his hand, her confidence
It's a rather
quiet
peculiar
but sure.
situation, wouldn't you
"Then do
agree?
it. We both can." By now, word had spread, inside and outside the estate, about Emma's role in uncovering the truth. Some whispered her name with admiration, others with resentment, some even as a warning. The girl who brought a dynasty to its knees. At first, Emma recoiled from the attention. But as the days passed, she recognized that her strength
Good morning,
came from
everyone.
embracing her
Good morning.
choices fully, in spite of fear. One evening,
I trust
Margaret
you all
found her
slept
alone,
well.
gazing out
I just
over the
wanted to tell
moonlit
you that
lawn.
this is not right.
The older woman placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "You've changed everything, dear. Not just for them, but for
There
yourself.
is a certain
That
way
takes
we
real
do things
courage.
here.
Whatever happens next, don't
A woman
forget
of
what
your
you're
station
capable
must
of."
always conduct
Emma
herself with
turned
the
to hug
utmost decorum
Margaret,
and grace,
tears of
understanding
gratitude
the
stinging
nuances
her
of proper
eyes.
social
"I
etiquette.
won't," she promised. On the last day, before
I
authorities
did
would
not expect you
return
to be
to interview the family again, Emma gathered everyone in the great
You're
hall,
gonna sing right now,
family, staff, even the youngest
You really do not
Montgomery
need to do
cousins.
this.
The air was
Hey,
thick
I
with
represent the
uncertainty,
best of
but
Montgomery
also
tradition,
with the anticipation of
embodying
change.
family pride.
Standing at the center, Emma looked at
They
the
look at me,
faces
but they
before
see
her.
someone else.
"I know I didn't start as a
I just need a
Montgomery,"
little more time,
she
and I
said,
can be myself
her
again.
voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. "But what I've learned is that real families aren't just built on tradition or money or reputation. They're built on truth, respect, and community. We all have a choice about what comes next. I believe we can build something new, something better, together." There was a ripple of applause. Not
I know
thunderous,
this will work.
but honest.
We just have to believe.
Even Evelyn allowed herself a grudging smile. David stood beside Emma, pride and newfound purpose shining in his eyes. Lucy hugged her fiercely, no longer the invisible child, but a girl unafraid to hope. For the
Tell
first
me,
time,
what was your family
Emma
life
felt
like
she
growing up?
belonged, not because she had molded herself to fit the Montgomerys' world, but because she had brought her own light into the darkness. That night, as Emma sat at her old writing desk, she opened her journal to a fresh page. The estate slept more peacefully that night than it had in years. In the hush before dawn,
And what
Emma looked through
precisely
her
do you
bedroom
hope to
window,
achieve
her
with
heart
such
no
a
longer burdened
transparent
by
maneuver?
shame, nor longing for approval. She stood tall, she stood her ground, and for the first time, Emma Foster was
I am
standing
just
up
saying this is the
as
right
herself.
thing to do.
A new beginning, morning broke soft and hopeful over the Montgomery estate,
Some people
a
just
tone
lack the
unlike
discernment
any
for true
since
quality.
Emma first arrived. The air was brisk and clear, cleansed by the storms, literal and metaphorical, that had swept through the mansion. Sunlight streamed across the marble floors and into every corner of the house, as if determined to dispel any hint of shadow. Emma stood before her window in quiet contemplation, no longer trapped by fear or longing. There was a serenity to her movements, a woman at ease with herself for the first time in a long while. The aftermath of the scandal had changed everything. The Montgomery wealth remained in jeopardy. The papers and investigators had not vanished overnight. Yet, the oppressive air inside the house had lifted, replaced by a sense of transition, not just for Emma and the family, but for the staff and even the vast estate itself. Fewer strangers lingered at the gates. Neighbors now greeted Emma on her walks, some offering wary respect, others shy encouragement. The day began with Emma quietly packing away the last of her belongings, not in haste or bitterness, but with a deliberate calm. Into a small suitcase went her favorite books, keepsakes from her mother, and the journals that chronicled her journey, from the hopeful college student from Ohio to the woman standing now, emboldened by hard choices. She paused often, running her hand across the spines or tucking away old letters, letting the closure settle in slowly and finally. Before breakfast, Emma walked the garden path one last time, relishing the gentle rustle of leaves and the scent of late-blooming roses. She stopped under the ancient oak where she'd first sketched with Lucy and Margaret. They were there now, Lucy with a fresh notepad, Margaret tending a neat border of flowers.
We understand
"You're
the
up early,"
situation clearly.
Margaret greeted her with a knowing smile. "Big day." "I suppose it is," Emma answered, kneeling beside a patch of violets. "Feels
Family
strange to say
tradition,
goodbye,
my dear.
but also, right." Lucy looked up, her eyes shining with both sadness and
don't
hope.
trouble yourself.
"Will you come back to visit when it's quieter?" Emma smiled. "Of course, Lucy. This is your home now. And wherever I go, I'll carry the good memories with me." She handed Lucy a small envelope. Inside, she'd tucked a set of colored pencils and her first sketch from the garden. A gift and a
Your
reminder
mother was a
that new
waitress,
beginnings
correct?
could be beautiful too. The household felt the change. Staff paused in their routines to wish Emma well, many whispering their thanks, quiet acknowledgments from those who had worked in the mansion's shadows for years. "We'll remember what you did for us," one cook murmured as Emma passed through the kitchen. The formal goodbye with the Montgomery family was less theatrical than Emma imagined. Evelyn Montgomery, eyes red-rimmed but dignified, met Emma in the drawing room. The two women regarded each other for a long moment, a silent reckoning for all that had passed between them. "I misjudged you,"
what are you doing next?
Evelyn finally said. "I was wrong to think you weren't strong enough for this family, or for yourself." Her voice trembled, but did not break. "Maybe
am asking
tradition
you to tell
isn't
me
what keeps us
everything you
together
know."
after all." Emma reached out, feeling no bitterness, only acceptance. "Thank you, Evelyn. I hope you find peace, and that Lucy grows up in a kinder home." They parted with a gentle handshake, not as adversaries, but as two women finally seeing each other's worth. David's farewell carried its own quiet heartbreak. They walked the estate's border in silence, neither eager to address the question of future or distance. At the old gate, David paused.
It's
"I
complicated,
wish I'd
Mother.
been braver sooner. I wish we'd had
No,
a
but
different
you have to
beginning,"
do something.
he confessed, voice thick with emotion. Emma squeezed his hand, her expression warm and honest. "We can't change where we started, David, but you have a chance to make things right with yourself and your family. That's what matters now." He nodded, brushing hair from her face. "Whatever happens, I want you to know you made me see things I never could on my own." Thank you
Is
for that,
everything
Emma.
always so
They
much larger
embraced,
in Ohio?
bittersweet, but full of respect. There was love there,
So about the
perhaps
foundation's
still
next
the
steps,
kind
I was
that
wondering if we could.
persisted
Yes,
after
that's a good
forgiveness,
point. But before we move
or
on, I
perhaps
wanted to
one that
discuss your
evolved
background.
into lifelong gratitude. Emma knew she had her own path to walk for now. Before leaving, Emma gathered the entire household in the great hall.
I
The
cannot
staff,
believe this
the
happened.
family, even young Lucy, and distant relatives who had returned home amid the chaos. She spoke plainly. I came here wanting to belong, thinking I needed to adjust myself to earn a place in your world. But the truth is, every one of us deserves dignity and community, no matter where we come from. This house can be different now,
Are you all right?
and wherever life takes us.
I will be.
I hope we remember
I will
that
be.
it's never too late to start again. A gentle round of
We will
applause
go
broke
through this
out,
together.
authentic, touched with emotion. Tears glimmered in several eyes, staff and family
Presume you
alike.
have an explanation.
Margaret
for this.
hugged her
Oh, no.
tightly.
was
Lucy clung
merely-
to her waist, whispering, "Promise me you'll do something amazing." Emma knelt down, her heart full. "I promise, Lucy. And you promise me you'll never let anyone tell you where you belong." With her suitcase in hand, Emma stepped through the heavy doors and onto the sun-warmed steps of the Montgomery estate for the last time. She did not look back in regret, but forward, each step a declaration of her autonomy. The world outside the gates beckoned with uncertainty. Emma didn't have a set plan, just a heart steady with conviction,
I'm curious.
a mind
Where do
sharpened
you
by
keep your money now,
experience,
dear?
and new friendships forged in adversity. She intended to return to her passion for writing, perhaps to finish her degree,
It is going to be
or
all right.
even to share her
Is it, though?
story so others wouldn't feel so alone
This is
in the
my new
halls of
beginning.
power. As she reached the crossroads where the Manor Lane met the town's dusty main road, Emma paused. The future was vast, unwritten, but her fears held no sway over her
Our
steps.
mornings are a
She looked over
carefully
her shoulder
choreographed
only
symphony
once.
of
The
efficiency
mansion,
and purpose.
smaller now, rested beneath the blue sky, its outlines softened by the morning light. Emma smiled, knowing that the chapters yet to be written belonged to her alone. Head held high, she walked on, into a new beginning, and a world that for the first time truly felt like her own.